entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals who seek excellence, bringing the business classroom to you. It's the Business Buildrs Show. Here's Marty Wolff.
We still got a long way to go. Yes, we all got a long way to go.
Welcome to the Business Buildrs Show with Marty Wolff, the show for entrepreneurs, business owners, and business leaders. I'm Marty Wolff, your host for the Business Buildrs Show, and along with my executive producer, D.C. Taylor, and my co-host today, J. Kelly Hoey, we will be your guides on this learning journey. Let me tell you our super objective in being with you today. We want to enthusiastically share stories and information to inspire leaders. That's you, by the way, so you can inspire others. The Business Buildrs Show is distributed by C-Suite Radio. You can find our show and many other fine shows at c-suiteradio.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.
So, J. Kelly Hoey, you wanted to talk about things we're reading, things we're studying. Okay, I took the bait. What are we doing here?
I thought it would be a great way to talk about, I want to say, the history of the Business Buildrs Show. You found me because of books. You are just a ferocious reader. People who are in business or in the C-suite are busy. There's endless lists and recommendations, but you've been interviewing, I want to say, a lot of people in business and a lot of authors over the last 5 years. So I'm figuring, who's a better resource for recommendations on books than Marty Wolff?
Wow, I'm honored. I'll do the best I can, but you're not going to fall asleep in this. You're not just going to ask questions. You better be ready, because I'm firing them right back. So you be ready for me, okay?
No, I don't just have my list. I know, I'm prepared. You and I both have our stack of books. So,
okay.
All right, let's dive into this. You have gained a reputation for culling the business book aisle at the bookstore and online to make some solid recommendations for busy business owners.
Yes.
So let's start off with this question, Marty. What books for you have stood the test of time?
The one that has stood the test of time for me over a long period of time, and for a lot of people, this may surprise you, is Viktor E. Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It remains a classic. It is still well read today. For those who may not know who Viktor Frankl is, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he was a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and when he was in those camps, people were obviously depressed, and they were struggling with finding a purpose for life. And he turned it all around and said, hey, look, basically, don't be looking for what things around you can do for you. Think about what you can do for others and what you can do for others outside. When you get outside of this concentration camp, it changed everything. And his Man's Search for Meaning book has been a classic, and I think I think that's the one book, the one book that has stood the test of time. There's business classics, different things like that. But for me, for across the board, that's the one, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Wow. And I think, how timely in this kind of day and age when we are switching jobs, questioning our careers, questioning the longevity of, I want to say a whole lot of things, how long a business will last, how long we'll stay in a certain job, the fact that, young people are likely to have careers in industries and in roles that don't even exist today. When we talk about, following your passion, that whole idea of having meaning in what you're doing and what you're pursuing, that probably gets you through a whole lot of good days and bad days if you have that.
Yeah, it's a classic, and I loved it. So, well,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That may have surprised you.
That totally surprised me.
I love doing that to interviewers.
Boom. I put my microphone on mute because I knew I'd start to fall off my chair, and I didn't want to interrupt the podcast. All right. What do you think? All right, let's sticking on the question. Don't get me off the game, Marty. You are being interviewed today, whether you like it or not. All right. What books do you think are must reads for business owners?
Well, I've been called the book guy, as you're pointing out, and it's a very difficult question to answer because there are so many. However, I guess a mix of current reading and some classics I'll throw in there. Can I answer it with a few answers? Is that all right?
Well, I did say books. I did say
books.
Plural.
You said plural. New Power by Jeremy Hymans and Henry Timms. And the book subtitle is How Power Works in Our Hyper-Connected World and How to Make It Work for You. It is a fantastic book. Talks about some unusual things happening in the world and how this whole connectivity and social media is affecting our world and governments all over the world and how things are being done. It's a fascinating book, and Jeremy and Henry are incredibly good writers. They're both based in New York City. Another absolute favorite of mine is Anything by Ari Weinsweg of Zingerman's. That one's probably not surprising. You've heard me talk of Ari. If you look up Ari Weinsweg at Zingerman's, you'll find his books. Probably the best one of them all is his last one, The Power of Beliefs in Business. The Power of Beliefs in Business. By the way, Ari Weinsweg's books are not available on Amazon or anywhere else. They're only available through Zing Train, his own company.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a guest we have coming up and how more and more people are consolidating their business, their content, their presence, their community on their own sites and away from, I would say building the business of others, whether that is Amazon or Facebook. So Interesting that Ari is ahead of that curve.
Yeah, he's a special writer, a brilliant business person, wonderful organization they built there. So I've got two more for you, if you don't mind.
Keep going.
Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. Be So Good They Can't Ignore You by our friend Cal Newport, whose latest book is called Digital Minimalism. But Be So Good They Can't Ignore You actually changed my mindset on a couple of things. And this book is already, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. I'm not sure. Cal is so young, it's surprising me. But Be So Good They Can't Ignore You really changed my outlook about this whole thing called passion that we've talked about often. And that you have to really work to become so good they can't ignore you. So much of today is a quick fix. And so Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And the last book that I want to mention, this is going to sound incredibly self-serving for me and to you, but I mean it when I say it, is Build Your Dream Network by none other than J. Kelly Hoey. Why do I say that? I say that because I see how this book is changing people's viewpoint of how they connect for jobs, for new careers, to build their network so it's good for their companies and across the board. So I highly recommend Build Your Dream Network by my good friend and co-host, J. Kelly Hoey. There's my books.
You mentioned number. How come I got number 5? I was going to say I was embarrassed that you listed my book, but now I'm embarrassed that you put on number 5 on your list. Oh, Jeepers, Marty, come on.
I thought I would just be, kind of calm on it and not shout it too high, too loud.
I would say the 3 bears philosophy on where to slide it in there. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned Cal's book, Be So Good, and as soon as you mentioned passion and the idea of the work that goes into not being ignored, it reminds me of our conversation with Maxine McCoy, author of You're Not Lost. Again, we live in this. Cal saying that, 8-10 years ago, as you're saying, when that book came out, but you think fast forward to today, people see an Instagram post and think you're an overnight success, and they don't see, and this thing, this digital world we live in, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about how so many people initially thought it was a fad, they thought it was superficial, and how those platforms have matured, and we don't realize, the amount of work that goes into being, I'm going to say successful. And we just see, a pretty Facebook post or Instagram picture or tweet, and we think it's easy.
Yeah.
All right. No. So many more books on my list. Okay.
Yeah. I'm giving you too much. Sorry.
No, I'm loving this. Is Marty. This is exactly why we were going to do this edition of the Business Buildrs Show. And I am writing notes, and I am going to put this together so that we do have in the show notes all these books so that folks can figure out where we can get them and I'm going to say our recommendations. Is there a book that surprised you in terms of a business lesson?
Yeah. This is the one that's kind of older, too. Again, this is difficult for me because we've already agreed and pointed out that you and I read not only books, but we listen, we watch, we blog, we write. There's an awful lot of activity in our lives. So when you asked me these questions, I really had to think about it because I wanted to be fair to the folks who are listening and fair to the people who've written these books. The book that surprised me the most in terms of business lessons is a book called Influence, Science and Practice of Influence by Robert B. Cialdini. Influence, Science and Practice by Robert B. Cialdini. It is by far the best sales book ever written. It's probably 15 years old. It still relates today, and it's all about persuasion. How do you do that? This whole idea of abundance versus scarcity. How do you answer the phone? What do you say? I mean, it's tactical, but it's brilliant. This guy is brilliant in terms of really understanding how you persuade others in a very positive way, not manipulative. So again, the title of that is Influence by Robert B. Cialdini, and it surprised me because I thought it was going to be another BS book, and it really got a ton of content.
Because we have had conversations on, BS books that are out there, and particularly ones that drive you crazy with your, I'm going to say, prior background in sales, then on that entire subject.
Yeah.
If there is one, you can only pick one book business owners should read. What is it?
Oh, boy. This is really unfair. Okay, stop hemming and hawing, right? Just answer the question.
Go for it.
Just go for it. I have to say Create Distinction by Scott McKain. Mm-hmm. Create Distinction by Scott McKain. You forced me to pick one for business owners and business leaders. That has already become a classic, and it is so important, especially in today's world of so much activity, so much hitting your screen, so much hitting your ears, so much hitting your eyes, that business owners and business leaders and all size businesses better figure out how to be distinctive. So I would say Create Distinction by Scott McKain.
Awesome.
How am I doing?
Awesome.
Am I doing okay? Am I passing the test?
You're passing the test. So what's on your reading list? What's on that bedside table?
Oh, too many, to be honest with you. The one we've talked about it, and the one that I haven't gotten to yet, but I can't wait to get to it is Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe, written by Roger McNamee. That ought to be interesting, huh?
Yeah.
And it's Zucked, just that you would think is Mark Zuckerberg. Zucked by Roger McNamee. That's really high on my list. And then another book that I have that I'm starting to work on is a book called Tyrant, Shakespeare on Politics.
Ooh.
And I came about that because Ryan Holiday continues to challenge people like you and I and say, here's 19 books, leadership books you should read in 2019. And this was one of them that was on that list. Tyrant, Shakespeare on Politics. It's fascinating. And by the way, Ryan, in case you're listening, I've got 9 of them read. And so I've got a lot of time to kind of coast for the rest of 2019. But it's a fascinating book. So that's it for right now. I got a lot more, but that's it for me because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I feel like I'm under the microscope here. It's time to turn the tables.
Ooh.
You know?
Okay. Well, I did have one last question for you.
All right.
I'll hold off. I'm going to hold off. I can hold off.
Okay, yeah, hold off. You can use that for the strong close, or something like that.
Okay.
This is a fascinating discussion. I'm glad you talked me into this. This is fascinating because we're going to have different viewpoints on different things. There may be some things we like, but let's go back to the beginning. And you said, in your point of view, what are the books, a book or books that have stood the test of time from your perspective? And you have an interesting perspective. You're a lawyer. You're from Canada. You came to the United States. You live in New York City. You've got you're a very busy author and speaker, and so I'm anxious to hear what books have stood the test of time for you.
I always think How to Win Friends and Influence People. Stan, that obviously immediately comes to mind. But I'm sitting here looking at a stack of books on my desk, and there's a heck of a lot written by a former, I want to say, Business Buildrs Show guest, my friend Tom Peters. And I think his style of writing has evolved. In terms of the format, in terms of how we take in information, the content, his advice, his premise. I'm glad he keeps writing books because he's clearly got to hit a lot of people over the heads with what is timeless business advice. I think part of the challenge for business owners in finding you're so busy with business and you're trying to get your profit margins up or attract talent or expand into a market. And so many people are looking for that quick fix. And there's lots of books and things that kind of sell that illusion. And I think going back to books that are, the tried and true advice. And like I said, I'm glad Tom keeps writing books so he can hit people over the head with them. One of the ones I love before the excellent dividend was The Little Big Things. What are the little things you need to do every single day? And he points out little things like the business owner, gets the bathroom clean right, little things like that, transform your business. So those are ones for me that, kind of.
If I can add to his list, The Pursuit of Wow. From Tom. Actually, I don't have that with me on my whole stack. But that actually, again, I mentioned a couple of books that I read and people that I follow who changed the way I think. Now, Kelly, isn't that a great description of a great book, that it changed the way you think? Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
And one of the other things I love, and I think particularly starting with, for me, looking at the little big things and also then into the excellence dividend, if you follow Tom on Twitter, if you get his materials that he puts out through his website, he releases PowerPoints, he releases additional content. If you listen to his interviews like the one we did, you get, when you read his books, you can hear his voice. Yeah. And there's something, I think, particularly in a business book that is so powerful that you're having a conversation with someone. And anyway, so there's why I love Tom, amongst many reasons.
Yeah. Well, one more comment, then I'm going to move on with another question. His first classic is In Search of Excellence, correct? Mm-hmm. And that has been touted as possibly the best business book ever written.
So, well, best-selling business book for 40 years. So what can you say?
So who didn't read In Search of Excellence yet? Get on that, man. Okay. So we're talking about some great reads for business owners. Is there anything else on that list? I suppose you have a couple other things to add to the list for must-reads in your mind for business owners. Is there a couple more?
This is, and if you're also going to go to books that this might surprise you in terms of business lessons, but in terms of a must read, Stephen King. I know I'm throwing you for a whirl with that one. Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, and it's, as he says, On Writing, a memoir of the craft. Mm-hmm. And why I'm including this is not, for all of you listening to, the Business Buildrs Show and thinking, what? Are we turning into horror fiction writers? No. We talk a lot on the show about passion, what gets you through the tough times, why you pursue an idea. And really, that is what On Writing is about. What would you get up every day and do because you love it so much, regardless of the outcome?
Wow.
And that, I mean, Stephen King, go dial back in the book, dial back in his career. If he hadn't sold Carrie, he would still be writing. He may be, Stephen King working in a commercial laundry up in Maine, and his wife working some other, I want to say, blue-collar job, and he would be submitting stories for $75 to publications. I have no doubt in my mind he would still be doing that and writing as rigorously as he does, because the man loves to write. And so that's what I sort of think when people sort of think about, what are they going to do with their career? What are they going to do with their business? What will you get up every day and do, regardless of the outcome? I don't need the Academy Award and I don't need the Pulitzer Prize. What will you just get up and do regardless? And I think that's really important. And so Stephen King's book On Writing, I did not read it before I wrote my book. So if someone has an aspiration to write a book, I'd say read Stephen King's book.
Wow.
If you're someone who's thinking about what you want to do in your career, read Stephen King's book. If you're a business owner, read Stephen King's book On Writing.
Wow, this is no BS list we're coming up with. This is deep stuff we're doing. This is a real public service, for goodness sake. And we're coming up with some great stuff here. Wow, I love that. That's what he wakes up to do. And there's too much talk of profitability and growing and being a unicorn. You know what? I hate to sound so corny here, but are you happy? For God's sakes, whatever you're doing, are you being good at it, and are you happy? Now, that's not to say you can be, I don't want you to be broke. I'm sure you don't either. But you know what? There's a lot to be said for having a good life. And if writing turns you on, that's what you should be doing, and maybe having that either a side hustle or a full-time job. But geez, for God's sakes, be happy. I both know. I mean, you've been doing the Business Buildrs Show for 5 years. If you weren't passionate about having these conversations, if you didn't enjoy reading these books and sharing this information, you wouldn't be 5 years into this podcast. Yeah.
Someone else may be looking at this podcast and thinking, wow, Marty, overnight success with the podcast. They don't see the 5 years.
Not exactly.
What gives you the stamina to keep going, and what gives you the energy to wake up every day and do the same thing, regardless of the outcome?
Yeah. Well, outcome has been positive since 2018 when I met Kelly Hoey, and it's really making a difference. All right, so time to put you on the spot. You can only pick one business book that you would suggest they read. One book. Can you give me that one book, or are you going to shirk from that question?
No, there's one book another book I constantly recommend to people, and it is Katharine Graham's book, Personal History. She was the iconic editor and publisher of the Washington Post during Watergate. And I think the integrity and values that she represented as a business leader, I think it's also a really important book because she was not groomed for a leadership position, even though her family owned that publication. And she stepped into a leadership role out of necessity. And I think a lot of us, when do you step into leadership and how do you step into leadership? I think the integrity and the values that she represented, and how are you going to make those tough decisions? And so her book, which is really open about her vulnerabilities, a lot in her personal life, because, sometimes that's what drives us to do things. It's also why I would also put it in the business category, because someone might say, oh, that's nice, Kelly. It's a nice memoir of a woman leader. And why would that be a business book? The reason Warren Buffett has not written his memoir is he has said, my friend Kay Graham wrote her book, and she has said it all. I don't need to say anything.
Wow.
Boom.
Holy moly. Boom is right. Wow. I have not read that. That's going to be on my list now. So that's fantastic. That is really great. So what's on your reading list? What's on the nightstand, or what's piled up in your apartment someplace there? What do you got on that list?
God, stacks of books everywhere. This is Marketing by Seth Godin has landed, and was saying in my mailbox this week. I've got The Dumb Things Smart People Do with Their Money, Jill Schlesinger's book sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
We got her coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
But I also have a stack of novels because I really find that I need to break up my reading by delving into, I say another genre. And I have this habit of falling down rabbit holes with the same author. So in law school, when a friend introduced me to Kurt Vonnegut, I couldn't read one Kurt Vonnegut book. I had to read all of them. And I've gone back to Michael Ondaatje, who wrote The English Patient, and found probably 4 or 5 other of his books that I have not read. And so those are all stacked up. So I'll be going on a Michael Ondaatje, little road trip, reading book after book. I also picked up Zadie Smith's latest. So I've got that sitting there.
I think that's such a great suggestion. I do that too, that I just have to step away, and read something different. And that's one of the reasons why I'm enjoying Tyrant, Shakespeare on Politics. It's because it's just a different thing. And again, we tend, since we are in business, and we share our knowledge, if you will, we're kind of always under the microscope. And it's a little pressure to take all this in. So once in a while, it's good to take a break. So I'm going to ask the next question before you ask me.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. What's the book you're looking for? It's not out there yet. What are you looking for in a book, and why? Why are you looking for this particular book or kind of book? Talk to me about that.
I'm looking for a book on how to curse out your co-host on a podcast politely when they stump you with a question.
It's a podcast, but let's keep it. Don't be mean to your co-host, All right. What else you got? Oh.
You know what? Here's what I think I'm looking for. I am looking for a book exploring the scarcity mindset that, particularly with generations of women, holds us back. And that is what I'm looking for. There was interesting study, Brian Uzi, professor at Kellogg, put out recently that I had made some comments on regarding women and networks, and showing how more millennial women, a different pattern of networking and sharing of information at an earlier, and for me it was much more sophisticated, but for me it displayed the lack of this hoarding of information because of, if I share this with you, this insight on an employer or a job track, then I won't get it. Like the whole idea of we can have one woman on the board. The silliness of the question, like we asked Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when is there enough women on the Supreme Court? And she's like 9. Where probably the interviewer is thinking, she's going to say 3 because we have 3 right now. Like there's a scarcity mindset. Yeah. So something that really, it's almost like the book probably 10 years from now. I'd like, hey, Professor Brian Uzi, if you're listening to this, I would like you to follow the women you surveyed to see where they are 10 years from now. Because are we busting out of that mindset? Because I think that's something that holds not only a lot of women back, but I think it holds a lot of people back when we hoard information and opportunities.
So send this interview to him so that he hears it all. Make sure he listens towards the end of it. And, as you're speaking, I'm thinking we just finished our interview with Jean Case, and we were talking about diversity, and she answered it this way. I won't get it exactly right. She says, well, it's kind of like what you and Kelly Hoey are doing on this podcast. You have different points of view. You have different questions. You think differently, but it's all coming together, and that's what's happened on this interview. I'm loving this. I think this is great, what we've done today. And you're going to have all this in the show notes, right?
I'm making notes, and I will send you a list so that you can double check it, and then we can make sure we've got it in the show notes. So what's the book you're looking for, Marty?
Oh, now you wanted to fire me up, didn't you? You want me to get all excited. Well, I'll tell you, I'm not going to rant, but there is an incredible disconnect between primarily your work and my work in terms of building a dream network or networking and sales. They're missing it. There's something going on in the world today that salespeople just do not make the connection to networking. You and I are going to write that book. Are you ready? When are we going to start?
Oh, that's doubly. Okay, the other book I'm looking for is when your podcast host puts you on the spot. A second time. And you have to come up with new ways to curse him out than you did the first time. That's the other book I'm looking for.
All right. Hey.
No, but I'm with you on this. And the idea of sales and building networks, because as we both know, Tom Peters discusses this in that the best salespeople aren't looking at quotas. They're focusing on relationships. Right. And there's too much out there where people are like, here's how you get more of this, like right now. And it's like, come on, people.
It drives me nuts. And I was blessed by either an intuition or just plain old luck. I realized that early on. I was the guy in the office who brought in the donuts and made sure everybody felt respected. And therefore, I had a heck of a career. And it added. So, we went over our time limit because we are so interested in each other. I hope others are interested in what we had to say today. Right?
And I think that's the title. You've hit on it. I think that's the title for the book. Bring in the donuts.
Bring in the donuts. Okay, that's very good. So J. Kelly Hoey and Marty Wolff together on the Business Buildrs Show. Kelly, how do people get in touch with you? What's your website?
jkellyhoey.co, Twitter at jkhoey. But of course, you can always find me where you find the Business Buildrs Show, because we've got some exciting episodes up there together, and so people can always find me there.
Thanks so much. This was a lot of fun. Thanks so much, Kelly, for being with us, all right, or being with me today. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Business Buildrs Show with Marty Wolff. Reminding you to find all our shows and many other great shows on C-Suite Radio. That's c-suiteradio.com. On behalf of myself, Marty Wolff, your host, and D.C. Taylor, my executive producer, thank you for listening to the Business Buildrs Show, but stay tuned for information on how you can become part of the C-Suite Network.
Bringing the business classroom to you. It's the Business Buildrs Show with Marty Wolff.
As a loyal fan of this C-Suite Radio show, we've got an unbelievable offer for you. Listeners to the Business Buildrs Show get 50% off a C-Suite Network membership. The C-Suite Network will help you become the most strategic person in the room. You'll have access to top-notch benefits and networking, all helping you get the most out of your position. Take advantage of this limited-time offer today. Learn more about the C-Suite Network membership at c-suitenetwork.com/CSR. Again, that's 50% off a C-Suite Network membership at c-suitenetwork.com/CSR.